believe this is our third event, and we have been having just amazing discussions, and we're so excited everybody's here to join us. And so I just want to let everybody know that we are recording, so that we will allow people who couldn't make it tonight to be able to see this wonderful conversation. And as I mentioned, I'm just going to kind of jabber for a few more minutes while people are joining. But as I mentioned, I'm the board chair of FCE. This is my third year on the board. I'm finishing up my first year as board chair. It has been an incredible year, and we're very excited with our new, I keep saying our new executive director, but she's been around for a little while now. And so anyway, again, just to mention that this is being recorded, and I want to introduce Megan Swezey Fogarty, who is a wonderful friend of FCE. It's just been wonderful interacting with her over the last few years. And so she is an advisory board member and associate VP for community engagement at my alma mater, Stanford. So very excited to have her here tonight. Go ahead, Megan.
All right, great. Well, thank you, Terry, and thank you for all your leadership with FCE. So as Terry said, I serve as Associate Vice President for Community Engagement at Stanford, and you can learn more about my current work by going to community.stanford.edu. But outside of Stanford, my career has been with government and nonprofit organizations, mostly centered on empowering youth to engage in their communities. And it's through this work that I, many years ago, first met Glenn Singleton and Christopher Rowe when they were launching Foundation for a College Education, and also how I met previous executive director Anna Waring, who was a very important mentor to me, still is, throughout my career. So when Anna returned to the region to serve as FCE's executive director, I happily joined the advisory board, and I have been a volunteer and a donor ever since. I say all this because in so many ways,
there are 15 participants in the meeting.
In so many ways, FCE has been a family for so many of us, whether we are donors, volunteers, staff, students, or families. It's just hard to drift away from this organization because of this family. And programs such as tonight's conversation really allow us to get to know our staff and what is happening, and to be more proximate to the incredible work that FCE does. So in just over half an hour, we're going to open it up to all of you for Q&A. And this is truly a family gathering. So when the time comes, we can just go to gallery and unmute ourselves to ask questions. Our conversation tonight is about how changes to college admission and requirements have impacted high school curriculum and graduation requirements, and how that change is impacting FCE's program. So let's begin by having Stephany and then Asra introduce themselves. So Stephany, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephany. As many of you know, I'm the program manager for the STEAM program. And I grew up in East Palo Alto, so naturally I gravitated towards FCE to continue helping East Palo Alto families. I graduated with my bachelor's in psychology from UC Riverside, and I've been working in like the education field in various aspects ever since.
Hi, everyone. I'm Asra. I've been with FCE since 2016. I manage the 9th and 10th grade program and the case management for those grades and those families. So focusing a lot on support, whether that's in school or out of school. I come from a mental health lens. So a lot of the work that I do is soft skill development and mental health awareness. I also, couple of years ago with some team members developed a program called the FCE Summer Accelerator, which addresses some of the things that we're going to talk about today related to inequity in the schools and preparing our students earlier for college.
Thank you both. So today's discussion is about the impacts on your program that are programs that are the result of changes to the college admission process. college curriculum and college graduation requirements. So Asra, maybe you could start. If you could share, what are the biggest changes that happened in the past few years regarding higher education?
Yeah, it's such a big question, and it's so layered because it can impact demographics very, very differently. So I guess what I can do is I can kind of just paint it broadly and then help folks see how it impacts our particular families. So the first is definitely an increase in applications, right? Folks from all over the world are applying to our schools here, which naturally means just more competition. And what that actually means then is that schools are now placing higher and higher importance on the GPA, which can be very overwhelming, especially, working with the 9th and the 10th graders. I get to see what that means for students. High school transition is difficult. You are going from a middle school experience where deadlines are flexible, where classes are smaller, where the school itself is smaller, to just something very different. And that can really impact our students' educational experience. And then also thinking about the funding of the school, because the GPA matters, but also schools are going to look at what type of rigorous classes did you actually take that got you this GPA. And so that's very difficult, because if the school is underfunded, which is what some of our students experience, then that means there aren't as many honors and AP classes. So what are the seats in each class that they are trying to get? And do families have the knowledge that they can fight for those seats? So it's just so layered, even on just when it comes to GPA. And then of course, now we're seeing more and more, especially within the pandemic, about being test optional or test blind, and how that might impact admissions or students' experience. And yes, I'm a huge proponent for let's get rid of that SAT. I think that's great. But it's not that black and white. I had a student in his 9th and 10th grade years who struggled significantly with his mental health, significantly. There were semesters where he just didn't even go to class. That's how much he was struggling. And then junior year, the combination of medicines became perfect for him, and he started to really get it together. And so the SAT was actually going to be something that represented his knowledge. And then come admissions of 2021, and that wasn't actually playing a part in his admissions process. So it's so layered and varies so much. And just a side note, federal aid has not kept up with the cost of college. And so that's a whole other thing as well.
Yeah. And Stephany, you're a recent college grad, as you said, from UC Riverside. When you were a student there, had any of these college requirements yet been implemented? And perhaps also you can talk about your experience at Eastside College Prep, were students required to have 4 years of math even? Yeah, what can you tell us?
Yeah, I mean, I think the saying I remember most when I was in high school is every A is just more money. So like your grades mattered so much. And at that point I was like, how does that, even matter? But now, it's a matter of how competitive we are. And yeah, we were required to take math all 4 years. And so it really started off with like the summer before 9th grade, where we had like a math boot camp, and before we took our placement test, and we were expected to take like geometry and algebra 2 our first year, and then as 10th graders it's trigonometry, juniors calculus, seniors it's the APs, BC, calculus A, what was it, AB and BC. And so that's kind of how we did everything else too. We took these classes to really senior year, just have all APs and really make ourselves seem very competitive when we started applying to colleges. And so, yeah, well, I think it was very, very like, I guess, just normal for us. It wasn't until I graduated that I realized like, oh, this is why we had to do all that, because the competition and yeah, so many applications, every A really is just more money. And so that's when scholarships came in and everything. So yeah, I think a lot of movement was already happening. A lot of changes were already in place. And so that's kind of how we just had to tailor ourselves too. And other than, getting good grades, we also had to take electives and volunteering. And so it was just a mix of things. And so everything kind of like comes into play when applying.
But I'd say also that Eastside Prep is pretty unique because they're really focused on everyone going to a 4-year college or university. What did you see in your peers and at the public schools?
Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting because, I mean, when I got into Eastside, I was the only person from my middle school to be there. And so I would still talk to my friends and I was just like, hey, how come you're not doing this? Or maybe you should volunteer. And, I realized that my friends weren't doing the things that I was doing. And so I started to, question it. But I think it was really a matter of preparing us to really get us into that 4-year university. And I realized that, yeah, public schools weren't always doing that. And it was a matter of the student wanting to volunteer or just really following their own interests. And that's how they were able to navigate themselves. But just the amount of, I guess, the amount of work that the student had to do on their own was just really large compared to like what we did. We really had it like tailored to us and we had that path. We were just like hitting all the milestones that we were given. So yeah, it's very different.
Yeah. And I think that's one of FCE's challenges. They have young people from many different places, many different kinds of middle schools. So Asra, you mentioned a few things, but maybe you could elaborate on how the changes that colleges have made are trickling down and maybe some of the other challenges or requirements that students are facing in high school.
I think because it's becoming so difficult, because it's becoming so competitive, our students' mental health is really struggling. And that is the foundation. If they're not feeling well, how are they supposed to focus? How are they supposed to feel worthy of asking for help? How are they supposed to practice perspective when they've received a low score on something? Mental health is so incredibly foundational and informs every part of their day. That's one of the bigger struggles that I'm seeing and impacts on my students. What's the silver lining here is that students do have more language to say. 6 years ago, my students weren't telling me, Asra, I think I have anxiety, or I couldn't sleep last night. Which part of the struggles I've shared with you could be related to that? So the students are a lot more informed and then more willing to have more honest conversations about mental health challenges, which has made my job easier. However, that doesn't change the fact that schools are still very much so focused on GPA, and it gives the students less wiggle room as they're transitioning into high school, as they're trying new subjects for the first time. You could be a junior and taking psychology for the first time. That's a really great experience for a student to have, but also an entirely new subject that they've never learned before. And schools still want to see like this upward trend with the GPAs. I can't imagine how stressful it is to be a student right now. And then on top of that, to be learning virtually. Now that my students are going back onto campus, they've been enjoying the experience. And I'm glad that it's happening, 5 kids at a time in a classroom, because what I've been talking to Maria about is like, how are we going to transition our students back into small group environments, large group environments? How are we going to do that? I've had some really funny interactions with my students when they show up for just a quick pickup. They're in their masks and I'm in my mask, and they will interrupt me and they'll say, okay, I'm going to go by. And they turn around and they leave. They're like just very, very interesting places with their energies right now. and not something I've seen before. And it's not just going to disappear. So that's going to be a whole new challenge for our students transitioning into in-person learning. And then things that already exist is just the inequity they've experienced in the classes that they've been placed into in the first place. Like, schools are assuming that because families are Spanish speakers, that's their students are exclusively Spanish speakers. And parents are not realizing that they can question that. And this happened in my first meeting with a 9th grade family, when the mom said, wait, I can tell the counselor to take my student out of this class? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So it's just been, it can be so angering sometimes, because I experienced that. We speak Hindi at home. And then when my dad saw my schedule in 2nd grade, he said, why are you in an ESL class? And that changed immediately, but that was because he knew. And so, we have some families that don't know what their rights are. And so it's just an uphill battle with so many different things always out there.
That's such an important role that FCE plays in helping parents be advocates, and also the schools knowing FCE and FCE being able to be an advocate. And the mental health, where, our whole society is suffering now. I mean, and then on top of that, the economic uncertainty people are confronting. It's a daunting time for these young people. So Stephany, maybe share a little bit of what this means for our middle school students. What is this looking like for our FCE students who are in grade 6 or 7?
Yeah, and so first, maybe I can explain a little bit about STEAM for those of you who may not know. But yeah, STEAM is year-round. We really help with what we can, but we try to help them develop like the skills needed to transition into high school. And we give them like tutoring. We do regular hands-on and project-based learning. And then we also do workshops for the students and for parents to promote personal growth and really just ways to help their middle schoolers develop into, just successful students. And so, yeah, I mean, it really does start off with like middle school. We try to, inform them as much as we can. The parents, informing them what their rights are too when it comes to choosing classes and just different things that we can really help with. And it really just means that, for 6th and 7th graders, that's where we really have to make sure they're not falling behind, and where we're really addressing these challenges that they're having. And sometimes it's hard for, middle schoolers to evaluate themselves and then vocalize that and think of solutions. And so that's why we're here too, helping them figure that out, and conversations with parents and maybe counselors. And so that's really where it kind of begins. And then we start tackling those challenges and see how we can improve, or just think of ways to, just give them better like studying habits and just different tools to add onto their toolkit as they approach high school. Because I think the sooner we can address those, once they're in high school, there's no more, support classes. We just have them in either the level they're supposed to be in or advanced, which would be great.
Yeah, so say a little bit more about maybe how these sort of the trickle down of what Asra was talking about is happening in college and high school, is shifting how you think about the middle school program. As I recall, an 8th grader has to have done some level of math to get on that track that you talked about. You were in at Eastside where you had 4 years of math, right? So can you say anything else about how you're trying, STEAM was started how many years ago? 5, 6, 8, I don't know. But it was really started because FCE realized in the high school level, that was too late. We wanted to do more with middle schoolers. So anything else to share about either the specific changes that you've made, or also just how are our middle schoolers doing?
Yeah. And so first we do try to help with academics. And so we do have like tutoring pods, and these are with like really, really qualified tutors, and the students have expressed to be doing better in math, which is really important, or just different kinds of improvement, and just like emails from proud moms. And I think that's really good. too, but also we still incorporate, for instance, the STEAM project-based learning. We really want students to be excited about learning. We don't want them to just, go through the motions and, this is what I have to do. We really just want them to be curious and really try to just really want to be a student and aim for college. And so we have like college knowledge where we tell them about colleges. We have them, I guess now do virtual field trips and just learn about what they like, who they are as a person, and maybe they can follow those interests when they grow up and go into college. And so that could be like what they major in, or their electives and or volunteer opportunities. And so that's what we're trying to do now. I constantly ask them about like outside of school, like what do you like to do, and then we can maybe use those interests and incorporate them into STEAM learning. And I think that's how we keep them engaged and just interested in learning. And I think that's where it really starts. And of course, also just talking to parents and having them know like, hey, this is what your student likes. Right now they like Among Us, or like just different things that are happening. And I think that just keeps the conversation going to really continue that in high school.
Yeah, and I imagine, Asra, that's also that project-based learning, or I guess more broadly, how are college applicants applying their knowledge as opposed to just the grades, right? So what are those? Oh, thank you, Fran. STEAM started in 2013. One of the things that distinguishes a young person in an application beyond the grades is what have they done in high school, right? So I imagine that project-based learning, that getting them to think about what they're passionate about, being involved in things, is also a piece of our work. Either of you want to comment on that? I don't know, Asra, what's it looking like at the high school level?
More as much exposure as possible, because what we're actually dealing with is like a don't know situation. Most students think of career paths and like very explicit, like lines are drawn, like doctor, lawyer, engineer, and they're not thinking about the in-betweens, not thinking about how you could even just create your own career and start your own business and be happy in that way too. So I think we've had some really good conversations in terms of career and things like that. But for me, it really is about that foundational skills for my students, because it's the soft skills that are going to get them to ask these questions. Like, how are they communicating their thoughts? How are they asking for help? How are they self-advocating? That's what's most important for me. And that's like my biggest focus, soft skills and mental health. Like, I just want to make sure that my students feel prepared for that. And what STEAM does so wonderfully is encourage all the curiosity around any of and all those things, so that they do feel like they know enough to ask a question about a certain career path, and that it's not just these 4 things that you could possibly think about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so great. Anything to add about that, Stephany, or exposing young people to different opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like Asra said, it's about exposure to they often are like first generation college students. Their parents do different things than what they'll be doing probably. That's just the reality of it. And so just even sharing personal experiences, or what friends do, or just what people on TV do, just different things. I think that's really a big part of it too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and also like soft skills. Yeah, we encourage them to, ask those questions, and how can parents help, of course, because many, they're barely 6th graders very often, and that support is crucial too, when it comes to students feeling empowered and all those good things.
Yeah. Okay, so what if if FCE, well, what does FCE need to be doing that we're not currently doing or can't yet do because of budget constraints? Like if you could wave a wand, what else would FCE be doing given this environment you're in?
I mean, our secret sauce is our high touch approach. The fact that myself, Josue, Stephany, all of program managers, not just know the students, but we know grandparents, parents, younger siblings, older siblings, grandparents, and any family friends. Like we have such a privilege. And we have such a great reputation in that way that parents know that, okay, this is a requirement and I got to come to, I've worked with other nonprofits and EPA, and it's been hard to have the whole family be involved. And so I just really like, it's just so incredibly special that we have buy-in from the whole family from the get-go, from the info session and the first interview for the program itself. But that means, like, the high touch programming means that we need more program managers. When I first started at FCE, I had a caseload of about 24, and now my caseload is 50, but with the same expectations of those regular meetings. So that would be really great if there was multiple people per grade. I think that would continue what our legacy is, make that easier. More scholarships, of course, as always. That's something that is always on our minds as program staff. And also, wouldn't it be cool, like, when wealthy folks, when their students get into school and you're looking at your kids' admit list, you're thinking, all right, let's pick 2 to go to together and let's look at it together as a family. Our families don't always have that choice. They don't always have that luxury. So how cool would it be if FCE could supplement that cost and say, hey, let's send you with your parents, go to these 2 schools and look at them together and come back, self-report, let us know like what you're thinking. And because not only does that give the parents the opportunity to see what school their student could be at, but it also starts that conversation before the student starts their college years and starts them off on a good foot. Well, they'll have a strengthened bond of communication. Their parents will have more context of their college experience, and maybe they ask for help more. That, especially for first generation students, that first year can be incredibly lonely. And so starting off on that real strong foot, like, I think that would be amazing.
And also one of the issues as far as scholarships, which you mentioned, is that sometimes our students have to choose a school based on the aid that they've been given, maybe potentially even more than if it's the perfect fit for them. So that also seems where if we had more support for our students, that might be helpful.
Those are very, very hard conversations that Josue has the very fun opportunity to have with families. It sucks. It's not fair.
Yeah. Stephany, how about you? What could we be doing in STEAM or middle school that we're not currently doing, maybe because of budget constraints?
Kind of like what Asra said, like staff, I wish I had like a STEAM teacher, like college and high school readiness teacher, and just like more adults, guiding the students in middle school, because my caseload is also about 45. And so as much as I want to give them everything, like I can't, I'm split between 45, and it's hard to do all of that for each student. And then same when it comes to like academics, I wish I could give each and every student their own tutor, and you guys meet as many times as you want, and because we do have tutoring pods, but it also means the tutor has to manage between 3 students, and so if one student's really good at asking questions, then the other student who maybe is not that great at asking questions just doesn't get the help that they need. And so that's also just a balance that the tutor has to make. And so yeah, I would totally give all the students some more one-on-one tutoring. And then just more exposure to colleges, but also high schools. I think just how we do like college visits for high schoolers, I think it would be very beneficial for middle schoolers to visit these high schools. And so maybe certain private schools in the area or public schools that they're like interested in because of their siblings, or somebody went there or something. And so I think that would be really a good idea, because I think there is this jump from like middle school and then college, but they're constantly asking, what about high school? Like, are we going to talk about high school today? It's like, yeah, we're talking about college, but we're prepping, we're going to prep for high school to get to college. But I think that we're still missing that kind of gap. We need to fill it in with more high school readiness and more high school information for the middle schoolers.
Yeah. So anything else to add about challenges that our programs face that you haven't been able to mention yet? Okay, so before we open it up to everyone, let me ask each of you this. We know that on top of the challenges that our students and families face, the COVID-19 pandemic is going to have a very long-lasting impact, especially on students of color. We're hearing from studies that students of color, lower income students, first-generation students, will likely be among those most impacted, perhaps even worst impacted. So some of the estimates indicate there could be a learning loss as high as 18 months. That's a pretty big challenge on top of all you've already mentioned. So what do our young students need, and can FCE provide it?
We're pretty fortunate that we are a small organization. So that's really going to help with the tailored needs for students. We are planning as a group what our programming looks like, how we are pivoting. We do a evaluation survey at the end of every school year because we want to hear from our parents and our students, and we are going to ask them that question. We've been virtual. What do you prefer stays virtual? So we're starting there. But I think because we are a small organization, we will have some leeway with supporting transition into small and large group interactions, which also then for program managers gives us the opportunity to focus on facilitating class bonding, because these students know what they've been experiencing. And so having them utilize each other as a support network. We really have increased our tutoring, especially in STEAM. We are strategizing for new recruitment right now for next year as well. We are constantly keeping our families updated on different resources. We have an ongoing sheet on our website. And case managers, we just need to be vigilant about our in-school advocacy, because our parents can sometimes just accept the status quo because they think they're not allowed to question it. And so we just need to be very vigilant about that and ask all of the questions and let them know that we are going to be very annoying, and that's okay, because we want to make sure that we are having our families think in ways that they might not think that they are allowed to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How about you, Stephany?
Yeah, I'm like many students, they were falling behind with their academics, and I think that's one of my worries too, because if they fall behind in middle school, then high school is a different story. And so a lot of students have had the luxuries of private tutors and even being in like small pods in backyards and such, and like our students haven't had that. And so I think if there's something we can do now, or maybe start thinking about in the near future about introducing those kinds of pods, then maybe that's something we can help with, because other students are getting it. Maybe we can provide that for our students, like in an FCE space, maybe not in like a student space, but I think to really just stop some of that, prevent them from falling behind even further. And of course, like the tutoring part, I would, give every student a tutor if I could, and just really have them work one-on-one, because every student is struggling with like different things, and it's hard to just start a tutoring session in the same place. And so I think just, yeah, being vigilant with our parents, like Asra said, just making sure that they understand what their options are. And if they want to select something, then that's totally fine, as long as they know that they had options for other things. And so, yeah, many things to watch out for.
Yeah. So actually, as you develop, what are you thinking to confront that learning loss? This is a message for B, Michael, and everyone else who's in leadership, that, that's a good thing to get out to those of us who are supporters, to think about, if you come up with ways that you're going to be addressing that learning loss, I would imagine that some of FCE's donors would want to help invest in that. So we look forward to hearing more about that. Okay, so now we are going to open it to questions from the group. So maybe B, Michael, we can go to sort of a gallery. There we are. So let's just open it up and oh, I see so many friends. Hello, everyone. So please just unmute yourself if you have a question, or raise your hand. We can be very informal here. Steve?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about tutors in terms of how we attract tutors. How many tutors do we have? How many hours they're expected to spend with their student? This kind of thing. How does that all work mechanically?
So maybe each of you can talk about tutoring at middle school level, tutoring at high school level. What does it look like, and where do you get the tutors?
Go ahead, Stephany.
Go ahead, Asra.
You want me to go first? Okay, so
Sure.
in College Bound, we have about 15 tutors. Our tutoring can vary. It's a one-on-one or group style / drop-in tutoring. We've been very fortunate. We've had our tutors around for a very long time. The average being probably around 3 to 5 years. One of our tutors just started his 17th year. We realized he could have been my tutor in high school. So we're very, very lucky that the tutors that we do have, and they're very great about also referring out, and if they might know. A lot of our tutors do come from our Stanford graduate student connections, which is pretty cool. Nice. Because, yeah, and it really just depends. We hope, I should say, 2 hours a week from volunteers. But sometimes they'll say, well, I'll do 1 hour a week. We have one of our tutors who is incredible. He does 3 hours a week, because the 3 students that he was working with, he said, no, Asra, they need an hour each, and I'm going to do this. So yeah, so shout out to him. So yeah, we're very lucky in College Bound.
Stephany?
Yeah, and in STEAM, I mean, this last year looked very different than it usually looks. So before virtual times, it really depends on like the volunteer. Tutoring would happen on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they could drop in like for an hour. And then it's really depending on their availability. Students would have an hour of tutoring on Tuesdays, or like homework help on Tuesdays and Thursdays. 1 hour of homework help, and then the other hour would be of like STEAM programming, like projects and like the hands-on materials. But it, like now, we had to contract with a Bay Area Tutoring Association, and so tutoring, it's tutoring pods. So it's one tutor for every like 3-ish students, and it really depends on attendance. Yeah, the tutor has to kind of juggle from student to student, but I think it's been working well right now, especially since homework is virtual and they're able to share screen and you know, they're able to look at all the details just as they were back then. And so that only happens once a week now on Tuesdays. We have them separated by grade. So it's, I guess, 3 hours for the tutors, but each student just gets 1 hour.
And right now it's all virtual, I assume.
Yeah.
It's all virtual.
So might be an opportunity to even get more. Other questions, comments? This can be very conversational. Marcy.
Hi, Marcy.
Hi, it's great to see everybody.
Yeah.
Hey, Marcy.
I had a question, something Asra had said earlier about the competition for the number of students that there's a higher number of people applying to college, and so it's more competitive. So the question is, are more people actually going to college too? Or are they, I don't know. I'm sitting here thinking, well, maybe FCE could actually have a relationship with some colleges where they know the kids are good and they're qualified. So why don't we like take a cohort and go with them? I don't know. Just like, is it ever expanding? Are more people going to college? More kids are applying to more colleges. And so it's still as competitive in that way. I'm just confused about the whole thing.
Yeah, and Asra, you might also comment, I mean, we at least are looking at several colleges right in the Bay Area, small schools that are eliminating their undergrad program. So that's something we're likely to see across the country. But yeah, so what about relationships with colleges or in general, what Marcy asked?
I can't really speak on our organization's relationship with individual colleges. That's not what I focus on in my work. But what I can share is that the increase in applicants, especially throughout the pandemic, it's been those elite schools. The elite schools have been saying, you know, but State University of New York, like they saw a decrease in applications. Y'all probably have heard of Mills College being one of the schools that has been really impacted. So it just depends on the school in terms of how many students are applying. Overall, as an average, though, I'm assuming that does mean that more students are applying across the country to schools in general. But that just means that our students are becoming just another number in the applicant pool. And so that's what we want to focus on. I think it's a great idea for us to be partnering with our neighbors like San Jose State and, hey, Stanford, you want to take 5 students a year from FCE? Like, how do we figure that one out? I'd love that.
Yes,
yeah, great question.
I should also say, this is a conversation. So Terry, Maria, if you have things to add to any of these questions, Terry? Yeah.
Just to echo some of what Asra said. So really the increase in applications is to things like the UC system, all the major public institutions, as well as the elite privates. But at the lower end, of the college rankings, a lot of the institutions are seeing a decline in enrollment, and even community colleges have seen a decline in enrollment, which is interesting because typically during an economic downturn, you have an increase in people going to community colleges. So this has been a very different kind of economic and pandemic situation. But also in terms of developing relationships, actually, when I was the provost at Menlo College, that's something I was looking at. And it's really hard to do just because of the nature of, not specifically FCE at all, but just that, admissions is different to each institution. There's all these different things, and it's hard to figure out how, there have been some programs that have tried to do that in the past. And one of my dreams is to have more of a collaboration across not just the institutions, but the organizations in the area. Oakland has Oakland Promise, but even they haven't developed any kind of specific goals for getting students into particular colleges. There's so many variables that impact that. So I would say that it's more likely that we're going to see more collaboration across organizations to make sure students are having access to college in the best possible way.
Yeah.
Let me just add on to that. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Terry. What we are seeing, and this is the first year from what I understand, that we've seen the numbers of our students, our high school graduates, applying to community colleges. We have of the 25 or so, 26 or so, between 4 and 6 that have applied to a local community college. And a lot of that has to do with the uncertainty, the economic uncertainty, their family situations, work responsibilities. So it's just uncertainty everywhere. But we are committed at FCE to ensuring that that decision to attend those 2 years, or hopefully just the 2 years at community college to get that AA degree, that we are working on now to ensure that we have in place and continue to work with our college success students, whether they're starting out at a 4-year institution or a 2-year community college, that the dream, that our mission of having students from East Palo Alto, students of color, graduate from a 4-year institution will still be met if they begin their first 2 years at a community college. So we're working on it, and we have wonderful articulation agreements, but we know that students get lost, or they can, because if they don't have the right mentoring, if they don't have the right advising, and our community colleges in California are extraordinary, but they're also suffering from incredible budget cuts as well. So those kinds of resources that ensure that we get from the 2-year to the 4-year, that transfer does take place. And I point to Asra at this point. She is an extraordinary example, and I know works with our students in that regard. She started out in a local community college and then went to UCLA. And I think that's a real testament that it does work, it can work. And that's, as I say, even though this may be a trend, maybe we won't see it next year, but I think it is going to be a trend, that we have the support for our students, if that's the decision that they make, to be able to continue on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I have one. Asra and Stephany, I know that Asra, you mentioned the STEAM Summer Accelerator program briefly when you were giving an introduction, but I would imagine there are many folks on the call who are not exactly familiar with that. And I think as we're speaking about the increased requirements for admission to college and wanting our students to be the most attractive candidates they can be, you might speak to what that program is set up to do and how it will benefit students as they eventually become seniors looking to go to college.
Was that a question for me? I was typing in the chat. I'm sorry.
Yes, if you would just speak to them about the purpose of Summer Accelerator and what its long-term goals are when they become seniors in high school.
Yeah, so for the FCE Summer Accelerator, it is a program that we have with our students starting as rising 7th graders. So they're focusing on math and English with teachers. And there's like 3 ways that the teachers will look at this depending on each student, which is cool that they get like tailored curriculum. Is there going to be a review and skill gap addressing that needs to happen, or a preview on the classes that are upcoming. And so in my ongoing surveys with students, FCE Summer Accelerator has been really helpful for them, not only in preparing for the content that they're going to see the following school year, but also in their soft skills and feeling more confident and more excited for the subject. And then the hope is that then they become on track for math, and so that they can start geometry in 9th grade without a support class for English, and starting in English as well at the level that they are supposed to be at, and not a random ELL class that they don't need to be in. And then that opens up their schedule with reduced support classes for them to be able to take A through G coursework, and even more rigorous coursework should they want to, so they can stand out when they apply to college.
And why will that be important for when they apply to college and get into college?
So their course plan, what they share, what's on their transcript is actually impressive. Like they're not only just looking at your GPA, but they're looking at the rigor of the coursework that you're taking. And college admissions are looking at, did you take advantage of the AP classes that are at your school? Are you challenging yourself? These are really, really important ways that students need to present themselves over the course of 4 years. And if you're stuck in ELO classes that you're not supposed to be in, that's very hard, and that can take a toll on a 15-year-old's confidence.
Yeah. And Stephany, anything you'd add about middle school level in that regard?
No, I think Asra said it all. That's why we're doing all the summer accelerator for middle schoolers, helping them become competitive for high school. Yeah.
Going back to where you started talking about your experience at Eastside Prep. I mean, again, one of the things Eastside Prep does is really challenge students because there's an expectation you're going to a 4-year school. Again, sort of within this mental health situation too, what's the fine line about pushing and challenging both at the middle school and high school level and, supporting and nurturing? How do you balance that?
Yeah.
Either of you can answer. Yeah. Why don't you start, Stephany?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting question, but I like it. I think Eastside did a pretty good job at like balancing that. I think once I got into college, I felt like, hey, like I know what to do. Like I just was confident. I was sitting in front of, first and second rows of lecturers, and I was like, I was a confident student when I was at UCR, and I think we really talked about like lots of kind of changes to expect when we got into college, and we also were encouraged to look at ourselves as students too. Like when we were in high school, we were still offered like counseling. We were offered different things, different ways to de-stress, whether it was art or sports. And I think we were pushed, but we were also provided with that support. And Eastside does, like FCE, they did a pretty good job at incorporating that family and like just parent support too. Parents were always at conferences. They were always, volunteering opportunities, and they were very involved. And so that made us feel like we were safe. And so, yeah, we were being challenged, but we weren't just being challenged with no end in sight. I think we had just that support around us to really make us feel like we were going to be okay.
Thanks. Asra, anything you'd want to add and how you strike that balance?
Yeah, from a counseling point of view, I can say I asked for permission. I asked my student, can we talk about this? Oh, I see that you, for sophomore year, you only want to take just non-honors classes, like you don't want to even ask for. Or when my native Spanish speakers, they don't want to take the native Spanish speaking Spanish. I'm like, why? And they don't want the challenge. So I asked for permission. So can we talk about this? And I think we are going to have to be very sensitive about that post-pandemic, whatever we're going to be able to call it. I don't know if it'll ever be behind us fully, but we've got to ask our students for permission. Teenagers are already, I'm sure, as most of you know, very sensitive to being told what to do. So asking them for permission and then being Socratic during that conversation with guided questions is going to be really important to have the most productive conversations and have them be bought into the goals that you're helping them develop during that conversation.
Yeah.
That's
Great.
pretty well said.
So I am going to turn it over to Maria now, but I guess I just want to, before I do, thank all of you for joining us tonight. I look around this screen and FCE has had such incredible support from so many of you. And just thank you for being part of this family. We can make a difference, and especially at this crucial time. And we have an incredible staff, as we've seen tonight. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce FCE's Executive Director, who will close this evening's program. So turning it over to Maria de los Angeles Crumet.
Wonderful, Megan. Well, first of all, Megan, I want to thank you very much for your support. You are well above and beyond someone who has given significantly to FCE. And we thank you as an organization, because we know that without the support, your ongoing interest in everything that FCE does, that we would not be able to continue as strong as we are. So Megan, wonderful job, great questions, very much appreciated. And that goes for all of you that are here, that have joined us this evening. So many friends I've only met via Zoom, but I want to extend a very special thank you to our donors, which are far more than donors. You give gifts, you give support, you are mentors. You have been with us, many of you, since the very beginning, 25 years going strong. So we're looking, and I'm so honored and privileged to be a part of FCE as it begins its next 25 years. And I know at some point we're hoping that FCE, that our mission will be accomplished, and we will, as Glenn Singleton once said, we shouldn't be here. That the issues of equity and justice should be so far along at this point, that the kinds of questions that we're asking about what FCE, the extraordinary work that it does, at some point we should move beyond that. But now with your support, and I'm so glad that Megan asked Asra and Stephany, what do you need? What do you need in your specific roles to accomplish your work, to ensure that FCE succeeds in its mission and its vision? So scholarships, maybe an increased number of personnel. There are many ways, more mentors, more tutors. There are many ways in which you become engaged with an organization. So that's what your gifts are all about: strengthening, building, growing. We want to keep the high touch, the high support, the high expectations. But we're in a new era now, and that means a greater level of engagement. And we're seeing that now. So I want to thank you very much for joining us, for listening, for asking your questions, and for your ongoing support. That is extraordinary. I want to give a very special thank you to Terry. Terry has just been exceptional as our chair of the board of directors of FCE, and an ongoing also supporter, a donor. Her expertise in higher education is extraordinary. We're hoping to bring her into FCE to discuss her book with the staff as well. That was our first program on radical empathy. So Terry, thank you so much. Really keep up the great work. And we're going to continue to have you engage. I also want to mention B. Michael has got more programming scheduled. So you will be the first to know. This is all about celebrating our wonderful donors, those that really are engaged on a day-to-day basis with us. And we've got some excellent programs for you coming up. And if you've got ideas about what you would like to see, please don't hesitate to let us know. We're always looking for new ideas, new vision for how we move forward. So, and a huge thank you. My gosh, Stephany, Asra, you are the definition of FCE. Your passion, your commitment, your engagement on a daily basis with students, with families, with the community, just exceptional. And as I say, I feel I've joined such a fantastic team of individuals that are really looking out for the community. And as Megan said at the beginning, we're a family, and I feel very much that I'm coming into a family of FCE, and all of you have made that. So have a wonderful journey. And to our behind the scenes FCE, B. Michael, thank you so much. Rick, I know you're there. Others who are from FCE, I haven't seen the whole list here, but thank you so much as well for your energy, your commitment, your passion, being part of FCE. So with that, I would like to just end the evening with a huge thank you again. I was hoping for more rain, but we are having a delightful chat this evening. And again, want to thank you all very, very much for joining us, for being part of these conversations. And I look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Good
Thanks,
night.
Asra. Good night.
you.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Stephanie.
Megan.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Thanks, Terry.
It's like the
Bye, everyone.
Waltons. Good night,
I
John
know.
Boy.